Last week, when my friend Connie, a 60-something woman, checked out at the market, the young cashier instructed, "You should bring your own bag. Plastic bags are bad for the environment." Connie apologized. "We didn't have the green thing back in my earlier days." The clerk responded, "That's our problem today. Your generation didn't care enough to save our environment for future generations." Well, when Connie told me that, it got my dander up. And I got to thinking, she was right. Our generation didn't have the green thing. Back then, milk came in glass bottles. Once emptied, they were returned to the store or set out on the porch for the milkman. They went back to the plant to be washed and sterilized and refilled. The same milk, soda, and beer bottles were used over and over. We didn't call it recycling. It was just good sense. But she's right. We didn't have the green thing back then. Stores bagged our groceries in paper bags that we used for numerous things. Most memorable, besides garbage bags and lunch bags, were book covers for our school books, so they didn't get ruined by our scribblings and could be used again and again. Too bad we didn't have the green thing back then. We walked up and down stairs because we didn't have an elevator or escalator in every store and office building. We walked to school. We walked to the store. We walked everywhere within reasonable walking distance. We didn't climb into a 300 horsepower machine every time we had to go 2 blocks. But she's right. We didn't have the green thing back then. We washed our babies' cloth diapers and reused them instead of gobbling up resources and overburdening our landfills. Each of my babies had 3 dozen cloth diapers, which lasted until they were potty trained. We dried clothes on a clothesline. Wind and solar power worked just fine. Back then, we had 1 TV or radio in the house, not a TV in every room. And that TV had a handkerchief-sized screen, not one as big as Wyoming. What a shame. We didn't have the green thing back in our day. When we packaged a fragile item to be sent through the mail, we cushioned it with wadded-up old newspapers, not styrofoam peanuts or plastic bubble wrap. When birthdays and holidays came around, we unwrapped our gifts ever so carefully so the paper and ribbons could be reused, rather than just ripping them off, crumpling and tossing them in the trash. A crying shame. We didn't have the green thing back in our day. In the kitchen, we blended and stirred and chopped food by hand. We didn't have electric machines to do everything for us. And we washed and dried dishes at the kitchen sink instead of using an electric dishwasher. It's how we bonded with our mom and our siblings. But then again, we didn't have the green thing back in our day. Back then, we didn't fire up an engine and burn gasoline or electricity just to cut the lawn. We used a push mower that ran on human power. We exercised by working, so we didn't need to go to a health club and run on electric treadmills. But she's right. We didn't have the green thing back then. We drank from a fountain instead of using a fresh cup or plastic bottle every time we wanted a drink of water. We refilled our pen with ink instead of buying a new one. And we replaced the blades instead of just throwing away the whole razor just because the blade got dull. No green thing back in our day. Back then, people took a streetcar or a bus, and kids rode their bikes to school or walked instead of turning their moms into a 24-hour taxi service. We had one electrical outlet per room, not an entire bank of sockets to power a dozen appliances. And we didn't need a mini computer to get a signal from satellites 23,000 miles out in space to tell us where the nearest burger joint was. But isn't it sad how the current generation laments how wasteful we old folks were just because we didn't have the green thing back then? Please forward this to another selfish old person who needs a lesson in conservation from a smart-ass young one. Or send it on to those in later generations. Who knows? They might learn something.